that the vaccines are still going to be, they're going to contain their efficacy. They're going to have their efficacy when they are sent to the doctor's offices or wherever. After the or during the manufacturing process, then, that thimerosal is taken out. So there could still be a trace of this drug. Dr. Richard Johnston, an immunologist, whatever he is, and pediatrician from the University of Colorado, whose grandson had been born on the morning of the meeting's first day, was even more alarmed. My gut feeling is that I don't want my grandson to get a thimerosal-containing vaccine until we know better what's going on. But, you know, instead of taking immediate steps to alert the public and get rid of the vaccine supply of thimerosal, the officials and executives at this conference spent the next 2 days trying to figure out how to cover it up. Since 1999, several states have passed legislation restricting the use of thimerosal. Congress has pending before it legislation, and you also should have on your desks a letter from Congressman Osborne. Since 1999, there has been a series of reviews of literature and studies attempting to resolve the debate as to whether or not the use of thimerosal and other ethyl mercury compounds are contributing factors to heavy metal poisonings, especially in young children and babies. I hope that you have had the opportunity to read some of the information that you have been presented. You're going to be told later that there are no scientific studies. Well, here's one. Here's another one. Several shorter ones, as a matter of fact. Are they scientific?
1 minute.
Yes. Do they tell us everything that we need to know? No. What I'm saying is that we need to look at this problem. We need to get the thimerosal out of our vaccines. Now, if you think that the bill is too restrictive, we can amend that. We just need to get it onto the floor to talk about it. We are not allowing lead paint, lead in our gasoline. We cannot destroy these things in a landfill. You have to have hazmat credentials to get rid of excess vaccines that contain mercury. And yet we're going to vaccinate our babies with this stuff? I don't think so. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hudkins. You have heard the opening on the motion to bring LB 49 to place it on general file. We have a numbers wishing to speak, and the floor is now open. We have Dirks, Flood.
Members of the legislature, I rise in support of Senator Hudkins' efforts to bring this bill onto the floor. If autism is produced or caused by the use of mercury in vaccines, we should do this. If multiple sclerosis is caused, another neurological disease is caused by this product, if other neurological diseases are caused by mercury in vaccines, or by mercury from thermometers, or by mercury from any place else, from fish, we should stop it. If we're going to vote on this issue and we decide to vote the wrong way, it'd be better to vote the wrong way on the side of safety, I think. We have so many unanswered things in our medical field right now. I mentioned to Senator Johnson the other day at Health Committee that sometimes I think we still live in the dark ages as far as medicine's concerned. We're doing things that we really shouldn't be doing and we don't really know too much about. And autism may be one of them, and the cause of it may be another. So if we're going to vote, let's vote on the side of safety, and let's vote with Senator Hudkins on this issue and bring this back to the floor, and let the pharmaceutical companies understand that we are not going to allow this to happen to our children or even to our adults. The pharmaceutical industry will charge more for the vaccine, but I don't think it makes much difference whether we make them take the thimerosal out or not. If they want to charge more for it, they'll charge more for it. The corporate makeup of pharmaceutical companies in this nation are there for profits. and anything that gets in their way, they'll object to. This is getting in their way, and they're objecting to it. So please help me support Senator Hudkins in getting this bill out of committee. Thank you.
Senator Flood, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I rise in opposition to Senator Hudkins' motion on LB 49 today. And I want to start by acknowledging the fact that Senator Hudkins has followed the rules pursuant to Rule 3, Section 19, Sub B. She's not doing anything here that's not compliant with the way we do business in the legislature. That said, as Speaker, I have my own concerns about motions such as this. I also want to acknowledge that I really haven't formed an opinion on LB 49. I have received calls from constituents in my district about the merits of the bill one way or the other. And I don't want to make any representation during my time this morning that would lead you to believe I'm for or against this bill in either direction. But adopting this motion, approving this motion today does set precedents in the legislature. For 3 reasons, I would ask you to oppose the motion. First and foremost, voting a bill out of committee, notwithstanding committee action, short-circuits our committee system. If bills are allowed out of committee onto the floor of the legislature that haven't been acted on by the committee affirmatively, what's going to stop us from having 1 or 2 of these a week for the rest of the session? I will add that after a careful review of the rules, I don't believe the Speaker is required to schedule these. But in fairness to Senator Hudkins, she filed her request, she followed the rules, and she's making a, might you say, a lawful request to bring this out of the Health and Human Services Committee. One of the things I worry about as Speaker is the efficient use of legislative time. We have over 700 bills that we must consider either in committee and some on the floor of this session. I would offer to you that bringing bills out of committee without the affirmative vote, enough of the votes in the committee to bring it to the floor, short-circuits that system and jeopardizes the time we spend together in this chamber on issues of importance to the state. If you find yourself in a position where a bill is not coming out of committee, and I have every reason to believe Senator Hudkins has done everything she can to bring this bill out, I would urge you to go back once again and work with the committee to see if there is a way by any means that the bill can come out rather than using this option to file a motion to bring it out, notwithstanding committee action. I see this as a dangerous road that we go down should we decide to start pulling bills out of committee, notwithstanding committee action. The legislature as an institution is short on time by design. This, I fear, will further frustrate our efficiency should bills begin to be removed from committee by vote and motion outside of the committee. That being said, I want to thank Senator Hudkins. She's been nothing but upfront and honest throughout the entire process in putting this together. I like to think I've operated the same way. I would ask you to oppose the motion, keep the bill in committee, and work with members of the Health and Human Services Committee to get the bill out in the event that you feel this is something that needs to be discussed by the entire legislature. Thank you, Mr. President.
Members, I'm so delighted that I get to follow Speaker Flood because I am going to stand in support of this motion, and I do not do this lightly, Senator Flood. In fact, I don't know if I can even remember a bill ever being pulled from committee before in this body. We generally take that very, very, very seriously, and we almost always say no. And your arguments do resonate with me, but despite that, and I will tell you my reasons why I'm doing this as I go along, despite that, I am in support of the motion. First of all, I don't think Senator Hudkins took this lightly either, and I think she knows that if she fails, the bill is dead. It is automatically IPP'd. So she doesn't do this lightly. She thinks it's very important. And I think she thinks that the discussion is extremely important, too. I actually signed on to this bill the last time Senator Hudkins introduced it. I had some constituents come to me with the issue, and I actually took the time to read a very lengthy book on thimerosal. She's pronounces it differently than I do, so I may not be pronouncing it correctly. But the upshot of the book is I don't believe that it was biased on one side or the other, because it said there have been studies on each side. There are medical professionals on each side. And so it is very difficult to extrapolate a conclusion from all the studies that have gone on out there. There were also a lot of chapters in the book that dealt with advocates for children and all that they have gone through to get governmental attention on this issue. And frankly, I think they were stonewalled in a lot of cases. But nevertheless, I think that the important point that I learned from that book is that there is doubt about thimerosal, and there is doubt about whether we really should be putting it in our vaccinations. And in fact, since the whole brouhaha started on this issue, a lot of this mercury-based material has been taken out of vaccines. I thought, until just the other day, that the only vaccine that had the ingredient in it anymore were flu shots. That's what I had told. But I got an email that listed a whole group of vaccinations that still contain the ingredient. And unfortunately, I don't have it in my folder. If we go on here at all, I will make certain that you all get copies of it if you didn't. So that further convinced me that maybe we really do. Maybe this is more urgent than I thought it was. I think the flu shots are bad enough, but if there's still a whole list of vaccinations out there, we need to examine it. This whole thing started back in the 1930s when the FDA did approve this drug without any studies. And unfortunately, they never went back and rectified their their mistake. But I'm afraid I'm not going to finish here. I guess I should try to wrap up by saying what Senator Dirk said made sense to me. Should we not err on the side of safety? We know that the numbers of autistic children are rising by leaps and bounds, and if I get a chance to talk again, I'm going to talk about that aspect of it. I did have a retired teacher call me the other day, and she said, you would not believe the number of autistic children that are in our classrooms now. There's got to be a reason for it. Maybe it isn't this. Maybe it isn't the vaccinations. But I think the doubt is there and that we should err on the side of safety. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Chambers, you're recognized.
Mr. President, bills that I offer, I believe in. The Transportation Committee killed a bill that meant a great deal to me because there is an ordinance in Omaha which leads to selective enforcement of the law when it comes to cars with transit stickers. They pick certain cities where people, certain areas where people of certain complexions are likely to live, and they enforce it against them. They will enforce it against students. They will tow the car, then make the person pay the cost of the towing and any storage if there is any. I think the committee made a blunder, but I'm not going to try to pull it out of the committee. If I decide I'm going to take revenge, I have a different way that I'm going to do it other than by undermining the committee system. I have other bills which may not get on the floor, but I'm not going to make a motion to pull it from the committee. Sometimes form should not be elevated above substance, but when that which would be called form goes to the very nature and essence of how this legislature operates, then it is not form in the sense of something which itself lacks substance. It is substantive when you decide to pull a bill from a committee. This is going to be an opening in the discussion as to how much influence lobbyists will have. They've already lined up some of the new people and said, this bill isn't going to come out. You can make a motion to pull it from committee, and that's going to be the strategy. And I will oppose those efforts. I'm not convinced that these vaccinations cause autism. I'm not an expert. I can't say what impact, if any, it has. But if every child who gets the vaccination doesn't get autism, then it must be the vaccination in combination with something else, or a predisposition, or something. If we give a certain level of strychnine, amount of it, it will kill most of the people who take it. Now, if somebody doesn't die from what is considered a lethal dose, that person is the aberration. But for the general run, that strychnine is lethal and deadly in that lethal amount. If the presence of this substance in these vaccines cause autism, there should be more cases of autism than not. That has not been shown to be the case. If somebody votes to pull the bill out, I will not conclude they're doing it to undermine the system. But I will not vote to bring it out. Since I've been in this legislature, my thinking has evolved. When I first came here, I didn't care a pop of the finger for this place or the people in it. There were some narrow-minded, ignorant, bigoted people, and they made it clear. So I was going to deal with them the way they dealt with me. As time went on, some of them were weeded out. I began to see what the legislature could do as a branch of government that would alleviate some of the very serious, chronic, almost intractable problems that people have in this society. So utilized properly and effectively, the legislative process could be a tool for making the part of the world that we live in, which is a very small corner,
1 minute,
somewhat better for people who otherwise would have no help and no hope. I don't want the system weakened. I think in institutional terms when it comes to the legislature. And I think one of the important aspects of this body is the committee system. The committees are to cull legislation and not send everything to the floor because it's introduced. I'm telling you, that hard-headed transportation committee, unreasonable as they are, killed one of my bills. But that's what happens when we offer legislation. We're not guaranteed anything. I'm not even getting into the merits of the debate about these vaccines. But I am saying very strenuously today, and it will be my position throughout the legislative session, that I will not support pulling bills from committee. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable President. Friends all, I rise in support of Senator Hudkins' efforts, and I do that not lightly, and I do that taking into account Speaker Flood's comments. And certainly he's right in encouraging us not to do this, and as Senator Shimmick also said, this is not normal procedure, but she has worked over the past years with this and other legislation to get the opportunity for debate on the floor so people get a chance to deal with the issue. It has just not worked, so this is within the rules. Her ability is there to do it. I heard Senator Dirks talk about some of the studies, and if, and I agree with him completely. But I don't even want to go there with autism. I'm not even thinking if autism is caused by thimerosal. But we all know that mercury is in thimerosal, and that's not debated. That's a fact, and we know that. We also know that mercury is a neurotoxin, and there is no safe level. There is no safe level of mercury. Why? Why in God's name would we mainline inject that into our most precious people, our children, newly born children? We have mercury advisories in the state of Nebraska. There's somewhere between 15 and 20 advisories on water bodies. We tell people not to eat the fish from those water bodies, particularly women who are pregnant and nursing. We have warnings against mercury. We're banning mercury from virtually everything. We have amnesty days to remove mercury. When we know it's a neurotoxin, when we know there are no safe levels of it, then why would we ever inject it in any amount into our children? Whether it causes autism, whether it causes any other illness, can be debated. The studies can be done. That can go on. But Senator Dirks is absolutely right. Why should we allow it to happen when we can have alternatives, which we do have, which those alternatives can be used? This is not about whether we vaccinate or not vaccinate. We can still vaccinate. There are alternatives available. And if there are alternatives available, and if we're not actually banning the immunization of our children, and I believe in prevention, so I think immunizations have their benefit. But why would we immunize children with a known neurotoxin that has no safe limits? It just doesn't make sense to me, particularly when there are alternatives available. So when I say I don't support this lightly, I don't. But I do support it because Senator Hudkins, I believe, is right on point. We need to prevent that mercury from being put into our children. And this is a way that we can do that. We can still provide the vaccinations. I think autism is a distraction from the issue. We can go on, and I think someday it will be proven that autism has a direct link with it, thimerosal. But that, to me, isn't the issue. The issue is, should we put a known neurotoxin into our children? And I would agree with Senator Dirks. I think we need to err on the side of caution. I think we need to be sure that we're not contributing in any way to that injection having mercury in it. And this is a way to do it.
1 minute.
Senator Hudkins is within the rules, and she's also within her own personal convictions and concerns that she believes this is the right thing to do, and she's doing it in the right way. Because of that, I support her efforts, and I support all those parents who are crying out for our legislative authority to ban thimerosal and mercury. At the same time, we continue to allow for our children to be immunized. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Mr. President and members of the legislature, I don't believe this is the way that we should go about this either. With all of the new senators that we have here, I think that we need to learn that we go through the committee process. I have had my own bills killed. I've had my own priority bills killed in committee, but we still go by the system. If we get into thinking that whatever is our interest, we bring it to the floor, is that the way we go about this? I don't believe that Senator Hudkins has even designated this as her priority bill. And yet, here we go. Well, let's talk about some of the facts. First of all, there is no proof whatsoever that thimerosal causes autism. It was suspected at one point. There have been people that have hung on to that and say this is the cause. Most of the studies that have been suggested by Senator Hudkins are old studies. There are actually quite a few studies that cannot find a link. Indeed, there is a recent one out of Canada that says this may be a genetic abnormality. this may be a genetic cause. The fact of the matter is we don't know. So why in the world do we think as a legislature that we know more than our national organizations, every one of which disagrees with Senator Hudkins, every one of which disagrees with Senator Hudkins? Our international reputation, when the Chinese had trouble with the SARS epidemic, who did they call? They called our national experts. They trusted our national experts, even if these people that want to call thimerosal the guilty party, we can't trust our own people, but the Chinese do. Isn't that interesting? Well, let's see who testified on behalf of this bill in our committee. First of all, we had Mr. Boyd Haley. Actually, he's a chemistry professor at the University of Kentucky. To my knowledge, he's never done any studies to connect this with the humans. He's taken pieces of hair and found mercury in them, and that makes the cause. That's our one person. Eugene Clark from the American Academy of Environmental Medicine in Wichita, Kansas. We had to look this organization up. Basically, their sponsors are organic food companies. Hardly people that study this disease. Who from the Nebraska?
1 minute.
Creighton and the university. We had people like the head of Pediatric Infections and Immunology Task Force testify against this. We had Louis Fisher, who has come specifically to UNMC as an expert in autism. Many others. No, we don't know what the cause of autism is, but that doesn't mean we go shooting off a gun in the night and hope to hit something. Now, Senator Hudkins, to her credit, has created considerable interest in autism. We are attempting to find ways to help our fellow Nebraskans, and you will later hear about a bill that we are going to try and do something in connection with UNMC
Time.
and other agencies. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To comment on Senator Flood's thoughts. With all due respect, sir, I was within the rules in doing this. You say that it short-circuits the process that we use here. If you don't like the rules, let's change them. You say that there are issues of importance. This issue is of importance. This does not use our time efficiently. Think back over the last 3 weeks that we have been in debate. Think back about how many times there has been testimony that had little or nothing to do with what we were talking about. Think back to the several filibusters that were done simply to waste time. That is what I would call inefficient use of time. I'm not going to stack the deck here. I'm not asking for a filibuster. I would like to have this voted on this morning, either up or down. The bill that Senator Johnson talked about, I agree with. That's going to give more funding to the children that already have autism. But you know, a pound of prevention, or an ounce of prevention rather, is worth a pound of cure. Pay now or pay later. There was Dr. Stephen Goodman, who is an epidemiologist at Johns Hopkins, said that, well, this explosive increase in autism is almost certainly not true. Well, what Dr. Goodman failed to mention was that this, in the 1990s, and I made a mistake. I said Denmark took its thimerosal out in 1972. It was 1992, and I'm sorry. But the 1990s was the decade of the dramatic increase in the number of mercury-containing vaccines to children. The Institute of Medicine that Dr. Goodman served on used a host of easily manipulated population studies. There are these same kinds of studies used by the tobacco industry that as proof that smoking isn't harmful. Dr. Goodman isn't able to do the one thing that would settle the debate over vaccine and autism. He can't show us the rigorous testing done on thimerosal before it was ever allowed in our children's vaccines. He can't do that because there were none. The drug company Eli Lilly invented thimerosal back in 1930. They said it was safe, and after the creation of the FDA, its use was simply continued. 2 months ago, on a CBS affiliate in Fort Worth, Texas, said, according to the Texas Educational Agency over the last 5 years, autism has nearly doubled. Some researchers are insisting the numbers are even higher. In New Jersey, they have reported a 30-fold increase. They spent $3 billion, that's with a B, on special education last year. 30-fold increase in autism since 1991. New Hampshire, their number of autistic students has tripled since 2001. Michigan, they have increased 200%. 25 years ago, the incidence of autism was 1 in 10,000. Now it's 1 in 50. Remember polio? At the height of the polio epidemic in the 1950s, the disease affected 1 in 3,000 Americans. Polio was a health care emergency. A massive effort was made to address it, not so with autism. Despite all of the official denials, there's one little problem. The autistic kids keep on coming and coming and coming. They will bankrupt school systems, public services, and social services. And I was just handed a note saying that there is 1 in 156 children now have autism. So what do we tell our parents? Vaccinate your kids for measles, mumps, rubella, diphtheria, whooping cough, and all the rest. But there might be a problem with the vaccine. There's going to be mercury in it, but we don't know if it's going to be detrimental to your children. Or do we tell them, don't get your children vaccinated? Because there's a problem there. And in fact, then you would have... Pardon?
30 seconds, sorry.
If you don't get your children vaccinated, then there's a very likelihood that they will come down with one of these other diseases. I'm asking you to look at this, vote your conscience, and hopefully that will be to bring this out to the floor. Thank you, Mr. President. May I continue?
Yes, your time is running.
Thank you. I would like to ask Senator Johnson a question.
Senator Johnson, would you yield to a question?
Certainly.
Senator Johnson, when I had my knee taken care of this morning after a fall on the ice, the doctor had a bottle of merthiolate in the first aid kit. Can you even buy merthiolate anymore?
I don't believe so. I know we never did drink it.
Drink it?
Well, we never ingested it.
You put merthiolate. We want to protect our little boys and our little girls. And who do we recommend gets the flu shots? Pregnant women, babies, and little boys and little girls. We want to get this stuff off the shelf. There is an alternative. All we need to do is say we do not any longer want or will use vaccines containing thimerosal. There is an alternative. Yes, it's $3.80 higher. But, you know, I have 7 grandchildren. Thank goodness they're in California and in Denmark because they don't use thimerosal there. But if they were in Nebraska, I'm thinking I would have told them, don't get vaccinated. Take your chances on the chicken pox. Take your chances on mumps. I had the measles. Took my chances then. I don't want them to be doomed to a life with autism or any other neurological problems. Mr. President, I thank you all for your time. I'm urging you to please vote this out of committee. Thank you.
32 nays, Mr. President, on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The motion does not pass.